Now in the series of the thinkers, the sociological thinkers, unit 4, where we picked up the last class, the last lecture was there on Karl Marx. We'll be picking up Durkheim and Weber, so that at least you will be understanding that what the thinkers are saying and how to approach your PYQs. I've always said that when you have heard the videos properly, noted down certain points, solving the PYQs would be too much easier in part of you. What I'm also planning, and I had told you people that almost every Saturday we'll be having the mentorship program. But this time I have asked them that I'll be linking with you with the Zoom, so that the PYQs could be talked about. I'll be requesting any one of you to make a WhatsApp group, invite me, so that I can join you, and all the students who are taking admissions, they would be joined, so that the certain materials could also be, which I feel that it should be there with you, could be posted, so that the things will become much more easier and you will feel comfortable. The very purpose which we are talking about in terms of these classes is first to understand what sociology is all about and how to look at the different kind of units, themes, what are the requirements, and also going into the finer points, so that we will be fetching good marks. And then having the comfortability in terms of the PYQs, and with a certain twist in the questions which have been asked. So that in terms of mentorship and others, when I will be talking about every Saturday, we will be meeting you regularly. 1 or 2 test copies have started coming to me. Checked it, saw it, and I'll on that same day, I'll let you know that what were the certain points, 2 or 3 lines which were missing, which could have provided very structured kind of writing and very in-depth kind of analysis, impressing the invigilator and the examiner. But today, apart from the Marx, the another thinker which we are picking up is Emile Durkheim, one of the greatest scholar and considered to be one of the founding fathers of modern sociology. A true successor of the Kantian sociology. And the similar way, we'll be looking at the socio-historical background, we'll be looking at the methodological concerns, theoretical methodological concerns in almost all the thinkers. So here when we're talking about, let's begin with this. Emile Durkheim. And we'll be dividing it in terms of certain parts. So here we are talking about and what the historical background, from there we'll be talking about. I had said that you also need to look at the intellectual debate that is going in around him, the thinkers, with which in some parts the concerned thinker which you are reading will agree, with some he will be disagreeing, but that would be the passing reference. So the impact of French and non-French scholars Tocqueville to Condorcet, to Auguste Comte, to Wundt. The certain parts in our discussions will be coming out from where he has taken the certain dimensions. Then A particular inspiration to the Durkheim has been a Kantian sociology. So B, a particular inspiration from Auguste Comte, the father of sociology, the founding father of sociology. And Durkheim's focus on C, focus on transcendental, beyond transcendental reality of society. So this is C part, within which we will be talking about the sui generis and other kind of perspective, social realism of Durkheim. And then the D one, Durkheim's combat with all those who had individualistic orientation, right from the Herbert Spencer to Adam Smith, and also he will be differing from the classical, non-classical economists. And why he is moving from the individualistic perspective? Mind the concept, because Durkheim is basically focusing on supra individual forces. You need to remember this one, supra individual forces and conditions. And then Durkheim's idea of E number. Durkheim's idea of sociology with a specific subject matter and distinct methodology. It means this is the historical background in which I have broadly picked up the 5 points. The impact of French and non-French scholars, some of his teachers, Tocqueville's, Auguste Comte, that was Auguste Comte's particular inspiration from Auguste Comte's hierarchy of sciences, mathematics, astronomy, physics, chemistry, biology, and then sociology, considering sociology to be the queen of all sciences. All right. And in this very perspective, we'll be having a certain kind of inspiration in Durkheim's social reality, that how social reality has to be understood distinctly from biology and others. And in this very perspective, this is the second one. And when Durkheim is focusing on the transcendental reality of society, there has been a very conscious attempt in part of Durkheim to separate sociology from psychology. And that's why the very perspective of social realism and use of the Latin sui generis, that is the existence and operation of society does not depend on individuals' psychological predisposition, would be highlighted. And once you have understood that his focus on transcendental reality of society, however, you also need to understand, sometimes without understanding we write it that Durkheim has neglected the individual in his criticism. No. Durkheim is not so naive. Individuals will comprise collectivity. But once from the individual the social emerged, social has its own life. That now cannot be reduced to the individual psychological predisposition or motives. So there is an interaction between individual and society. Society is not merely the sum total of individuals, it is more than it. And when you read such kind of perspective, we usually make a line that Durkheim has focused more on society than individual. It does not mean that individual has been neglected. Individual in terms of social has its relevance. So your approach should be something different. And then combating all with those who had individual orientation in their thought. All those theories, all those explanations in which individualistic orientation was highlighted. Right from Herbert Spencer to the Adam Smith to others. Durkheim is basically looking at the supra-individual, beyond individual, forces and conditions. And in this very perspective, the kind of sociology what Durkheim would develop would be distinct from his contemporaries, would also be distinct from his predecessors. And the kind of universal determinism, search of universal determinism, with his methodology and explanation what Durkheim would initiate, it will still be a challenge to the contemporary sociologist. And then Durkheim's idea of sociology with a specific subject matter and distinct methodology, that what sociology requires. Sociology not only requires a specific subject matter, but also the specific distinct methodology to study that subject matter, in which we will be talking about the rules of sociological method, in which social fact, collective social fact of the subject matter of sociology would be emerging out. Once you have done this, the historical backgrounds, then what you need to do, here I have said about, in the last slide, we talked about historical background. Broadly, we pick up 5. Now we are talking about methodology, from where the PYQs are there, from the questions are there. And I told you that every thinker has to be first approached by you in terms of the methodological evolution, methodological concerns. So, rules of sociological method. (1895). All right. Then division of labor. The themes which are written in the syllabus. Division of labor in society. 1893. All right. Then suicide is another concept. The theme which is there in Durkheim. So let's suicide, that is in 1897, and sociology of religion. So we will be talking about elementary forms of religious life, 1912. All right. And then you will be talking about criticism and evaluation. But once again, I am saying that you basically need to talk about your own self-critic rather than merely mugging up who has said what and who has criticized what, because sometimes when you forget the scholars, do not quote wrongly the wrong names. And in this very perspective, this is basically the structure on which you need to develop your understanding on Durkheim. Emile Durkheim, a French scholar, remains to be one of the most influential sociological thinker, even in the contemporary sociological discourse. And whenever we're talking about the sociological traditions, its development, its establishment and institutionalization, Emile Durkheim will remain to be one of the most influential scholar. And thus he is considered to be one of the founding fathers of the modern sociology. His ideas on the different aspects of society, the different concepts, different themes, reflect an enduring significance to the contemporary sociology as well. His ideas from methodological concerns to the subject matter, to the division of labor, to realism, to the most extreme individual act society, explained from the sociological variable, sociological perspective, are the certain kind of contributions in which the uniqueness brought by Durkheim that has to be understood, that has to be analyzed by us. Till date, he remains to be part of the sociological heritage, which not only inspires but also challenges the contemporary sociologists. And I quote Frank Parkin, written a book on Durkheim. So Frank Parkin says that sociologists continues to focus on the question what Durkheim has raised and plundered. The Aladdin cave of concepts that he bequeathed. There are so many concepts. There are so many methodological concerns. What Durkheim has raised, plundered, what he has left. That remains to be the certain kind of not only the inspiration but challenges in the sociological tradition. Durkheim became interested in sociology, but he basically bemoaned the fact that sociology, which is French in origin, has become a German science. Because the moment you start looking at that, how in 1838 French scholar Auguste Comte has laid down the foundation of sociology on the basis of hybrid terms, socius and logos. So Durkheim, being a French scholar, is now bemoaning the fact that sociology, though is French in origin, but it has become a German science. At the same time, the phases through which the French society has evolved, French society has transformed, is also having an influence which you would be able to understand the moment you go to the modern forms of realism. And we talk about his analysis of the modern society, either in terms of division of labor or in terms of suicide or in terms of realism, you'll be finding about his understanding of the modern society and looking at the certain kind of pathological, certain kind of anomic situations, certain kind of challenges before the society. But the phases and the conditions through which the French society has transformed has an influence on Durkheim. Thus I repeat once again the line that every social is the product of his own time. Every scholar is a product of his own social context. That needs to be understood by us, within which the theoretical and methodological questions, concerns of Durkheim are to be critically analyzed. I said right from Taqwa Valley to Condorcet, to Auguste Comte, to Wilhelm Wundt, somewhere there has been an impact of the French and non-French scholars which have somewhere reshaped, influenced Durkheim's thought process. And in this very perspective, Durkheim is basically trying to move toward the social realism and focusing on the transcendental reality of society. And the moment we say transcendental reality of society, in which it has the power to constrain individual. Now we also need to understand, which we'll be talking about in the division of labor, in the methodology, that there has been a very profound idea prevalent at this time, that individuals constitute society. By understanding the individual behavior and actions, the social action and behavior could be ascertained. Durkheim says that if you look looking at the social conditions and the forces, they mold and constrain the behavior of individuals. And therefore, in Durkheim's throughout his theoretical debate, theoretical journey, Durkheim would basically be giving priority to society over individual, or primacy to society over individual. And second one, which is the more important one, which will be making Durkheim to come to very close to the positivist analysis. Durkheim, like Kant, would also be believing in this idea, asserting in this idea that society can be studied scientifically. And thus, he inclines towards positivism and tries to define the necessary conditions for a stable and smooth functioning of society. A stable and smooth functioning of society, which would certainly be helping to formulate scientific solutions to most of the pressing problems of modern society. I quote one line of Durkheim. He says, why do we need sociology? Is sociology required only for the broadening of intellectual horizons? Philosophy is already there. Is sociology there to explain the individual behavior? Psychology is already there. If the sociology is unable to solve the problems of a mankind, we don't need it. And that's why a certain kind of social engineering, certain kind of applied dimension of sociological knowledge would become possible, would find its place, locations in Durkheim's sociology. And hence, if you basically need to solve the problems, pressing problems of the modern society, your understanding of the society should be scientific. And similar, as the natural scientists are discovering the natural laws to understand the natural phenomena, so should be the responsibility of the sociologists to discover the social laws, akin to the natural laws to understand the social phenomena. And thus, Durkheim will emerge as a positivist. So if we talk about where we talked about in positivism, we talked about Auguste Comte, Herbert Spencer, biological evolutionism, and Durkheim as a positivist. And from there, we'll be moving to the Weber, and we'll be beginning to look to the interpretative understanding, interpretative movement in sociology, and also the beginning of non-positivist stand in a sociological tradition. But before we come to the Weber, we first need to understand what Durkheim is saying about. The root of Durkheim's idea can be traced back to the socio-historical and intellectual conditions of France, from which he borrows something and also moves away from some ideas. A particular inspiration has been there from the Auguste Comte, and more precisely his hierarchy of science. There is mathematics, astronomy, physics, chemistry, biology, and sociology. And Auguste Comte has basically called sociology to be queen of all sciences. And in every layer is structured, right from mathematics to astronomy to the physics to the chemistry to biology. Every layer look at mathematics, astronomy, physics, chemistry, biology, sociology. Every layer has its own distinct laws, has its own specific laws. Laws of physics cannot be applied in biology. Laws of biology cannot be applied in chemistry. So if you have to understand society, you need to find your own laws, the distinct social laws, implying that social reality is distinct from physical and biological reality. Biology is higher than physics, but lower than sociology. And if every Layer here in organization has its own distinct laws. So what sociologists will have to do? Sociologists will also have to establish their own distinctive methodology to understand the social reality. And this particular inspiration of the hierarchy of sciences in Durkheim would somehow or other would be the beginning in the methodological concerns in Durkheim's perspective. And I'll not hesitate making a lie that throughout his life, Durkheim has basically combated all types of individualistic theories and particularly criticized his contemporary Gabriel Tart. We'll be talking in Society, the theory of imitation. And in this very perspective, we would also be extending it to Herbert Spencer and Adam Smith. Alright? So Durkheim will become critical of the liberal utilitarian economist like Adam Smith. And what these individualistic theories have claimed? Such theories have usually claimed that social processes, conditions, structures solely result from individual and interaction between them. But to Durkheim argue that social conditions and structures can't be explained in terms of quality and psychological characteristics of individual. And therefore, Durkheim is moving toward the social realism. Therefore, Durkheim is moving towards the transcendental reality of society, in which Durkheim would be focusing on supra-individual forces and conditions. Thus, Durkheim's sociology is focusing on the social processes and patterns which are more than individuals. What I had said? That society is not merely the sum total of individuals, it is more than it. Individuals will come, individuals will go, but social continues. And hence, Durkheim's sociological focus is on the social processes and patterns which are more than individuals, implying that Durkheim's sociology is based on reality beyond psychology. I repeat, Durkheim's sociology is based on the reality beyond psychology, since the reality of society is more than and morally superior to individual or individual's psychological makeup. In this context, we find that at the core of Durkheim's sociology lies the fact that society is a real phenomenon with unique properties. And to express it, he uses the Latin word sui generis. Sometimes you write it all of its own. Nahi likhna sir ko. Let me, I am defining what sui generis is. Sui generis, which means as a reality, the existence and operation of society, operation, the existence and operation of society cannot be reduced to the individual's action and motives. Reality of society is beyond individual psychological makeup or predisposition. Therefore, sociology should be independent of psychology, and for that matter, any other field. In this context, Durkheim moves towards, once again I am saying, transcendental reality of society, which is beyond individual's influence, beyond individual's experience. And to understand it, Durkheim lays down the rules of sociological method. Durkheim has also not favored the great man theory of history. That whenever we read certain kind of history, either in a Western society or Indian society, we find about that certain segments in a great man, that such kind of the great personalities have made the society to transform. He says, no. You need to understand the conditions which have produced such kind of great man. Durkheim also becomes critical of the social contract theory. That if the social contract between the individuals have taken place, why it was not there in the state of nature? Why this contract did not take place earlier? And that's why once again I am saying that Durkheim is focusing on those conditions and forces which have produced such kind of result. The conditions produce individuals. Individuals do not produce the condition. And in this dimension, we basically need to not only look at the strength of Durkheim, but also the sudden criticism of Durkheim. It is true, I said, that Durkheim would be combating almost all those scholars who somehow or other have taken the individualistic orientation and looking at in terms of the individual motives and other kind of perspective. Either the demographers or the economists or the psychologists, Durkheim would be combating all. And his focus would be more, once again I am saying, supra-individual forces and conditions. Now, with this background, we will be coming to the methodological perspective. And I always say, I don't know whether you people have realized it or not while going through the sociology, that though the foundation of sociology was laid down by Auguste Comte, sociology which was baptized by Auguste Comte received a certain kind of theoretical perspective in terms of organistic analysis by Herbert Spencer. But the moment you look at these two scholars, you find about various fields as the subject matter of sociology. Now, if sociology has to develop as a science, if the sociology has to develop as a systematic science of society, then Durkheim says that we now need to define what a specific subject matter would be there. And not only the specific subject matter, we also need to talk about the distinct methodology to study it. It means what sociologists should study and how to study. These are the two prime concerns in the methodological debate, methodological evolution of Durkheim's. Durkheim, in his Rules of Sociological Method, 1895, not only addresses the specific subject matter of sociology, but also the method to study it. In an attempt to establish sociology as an empirical study of society. Empirical observation, in positivism what I said, anything that cannot be observed does not fall within the periphery of positivistic analysis. So there is an attempt to establish sociology as an empirical study of society. He argues that too much weightage has been given to philosophy, psychology in humanities. Thus, in his article, Sociology and its Scientific Fields, Durkheim writes that history, polity, economics, statistics, demography, psychology, all study what is happening in society, not the society per se. I repeat, all these, right from the history to polity, to economics, to demography, to psychology, to statistics, they are basically studying what is happening in society or what happens in society, not the society per se. And thus, he separates sociology from the other branches, more precisely from philosophy and psychology. And his focus on the empirical study of society by focusing on the procedures which would help to establish general supra-individual forces, laws, structures, functional connections. He makes sociology move away from philosophy and psychology. And thus, in this very context, laying down the foundations of rules of sociological method, Durkheim comes very close to the positivistic methodology and becomes a supporter of the positivistic methodology. To Durkheim, sociology is a discipline ought to study only shared collective social facts in the searchful chain of causality and functionality, for which he disapproves the perceptions and motives of individuals' action. Very nascent phase. How sociology is different from psychology has been established by Durkheim. Alright? I said it prior to Durkheim, it was argued that sociology neither is a specific subject matter, nor it has a distinct methodology or methods of inquiry. it was argued that social phenomena can be studied by the psychological perspective, since social behavior is not distinct from the individual's behavior. However, Durkheim argues that psychological causes are merely the manifestation of social causes, not the other way around. The social facts are the cause of social behavior. Hence, sociologists are required to study social facts. Alright? अब पहले define कर लेते बेटा. Social facts are those collective ways of thinking, feeling and doing, which though comes through individual, but are external to him and are endowed with the coercive power. It means, now the moment we are saying about a specific subject matter, you pick up social fact. Alright? And when we talk about distinct methodology, it means how to study the social fact, causal and functional. इसी causal में बेटा comparative methods के क्वेश्चन भी बनेंगे. I hope while noting down certain points, listening to the videos and watching this one, you are also writing down certain points, and these points would basically be very instrumental in making you comfortable in solving the PYQs. Alright? And social facts are objective facts. They are to be viewed as a thing outside the individual psychological manifestation. They have their own independent existence. It means its existence and operation cannot be reduced to the individualistic psychological predisposition. And once you have said about the social facts are those collective ways of thinking, feeling, doing, which though comes through individual, but are external to him, are endowed with the coercive power. It means the social facts can outlast any biological or psychological dimension. Social can outlast any individual or set of individuals. So in this very perspective, remember one word, ECG. This is the feature of social fact. So sometimes you find the questions, all the facts are not social facts. So E for external, C for constraint, G for generality. Generality further in terms of normal and pathological. So the social facts are objective facts. They are to be seen as a thing from outside, so that the external nature could be understood and not from the internal dimension of individual. They have their own independent identity, existence. So social facts are objective facts, which are required to be studied objectively and be approached like natural objects, implying that as the natural scientists are discovering natural laws to study natural phenomena, sociologists also need to discover and establish social laws to understand social phenomena, for which sociologists are required to discover objective social facts. The social institutions contains all the social facts what the sociologists are interested in. Society is a sui generis reality, having an objective reality away from individual within it. अब यहां पे थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम बेटा, थोड़ा समझ. Though Durkheim considers society to be real, but as a matter of fact, society is intangible, does not have a physical form. Thus, the constraining forces emerging of the social is too difficult to measure. Clear hai? Since it is intangible, does not have a physical form, so how the constraining power C is emerging out of this, that is difficult to measure. However, Durkheim argues that even if social cannot be seen, it must be measured if sociology needs to develop as a science of society, for which Durkheim moves towards indicators. याद रखना बेटा. The three indicators we need to remember: historical indicators, which we will be using in division of labor; a statistical indicator, which we will be using in a society of Durkheim; an ethnographic indicator which we will be using in religion of Durkheim. Durkheim argues that these indicators are not arbitrarily constructed. Rather, they are real. And since they are real, they must be discovered, for which sociologists should try to look for causal significance from the perspective of reality of society. As a reality from the sui generis perspective, that is as a fact irreducible in origin and operation of individual acts. It means as a reality, it cannot be explained from the perspective of actions and motives of individual. Social facts are required to be studied from outside rather than from inside, based on individual subjective psychological predisposition, for which sociologists need to discard preconceptions, lack of clarity, prejudices, and in this very perspective, can I now say that the central theme in the study of Durkheim is a social fact, which I have already defined it. Social facts are to be treated as a things from outside mind and independent of individual, implying that they have their own independent existence, containing within themselves social order, consisting of laws, causal connections and functions. Social facts are material, non-material, and social currents in form. So material hai, non-material, social currents. And we need a science of social fact, whose reality and objectivity cannot be reduced to the subjective actions and motives of individual. Thus, what we need to do? Preconceptions are to be eradicated. Alright? Every sociological investigation must begin with the study of social facts as a sui generic reality. Sociologists must establish causal connectivity, cause and effect relationship to determine how to study and what principle to follow. Then the explanations of social facts must be separately follow sufficient causal and functional analysis. An explanation of social facts must be sought within society itself to study it scientifically. It means social facts must be succeeded and preceded by the social facts. So if we talk about what are the examples of social fact, and particularly the themes which are there in syllabus, division of labor, suicide, religion, they all are the social facts. So they must be explained with the help of the social facts. The social facts have to be succeeded and preceded by social facts. Alright? Durkheim's methodology though focuses on discovery and establishment of social laws. He realizes that sociology, like natural science, is not in a privileged condition to go for the direct experimentation. As you are doing the direct experimentation in natural science, sociology is not in a condition to go for the direct experimentation. Thus, Durkheim focuses on indirect experimentation, which we call comparative methods in Durkheim's analysis. And let me make it clear that Durkheim says that comparative method is not a method in sociology. It is sociology in itself. Because only through this comparative method we would be able to determine the causal connectivity. Comparative method is not to talk about how the societies have evolved, how the societies seem to be similar or different from one another. No. The way the historians, the evolutionists have basically used the comparative method, Durkheim disapproves that one. If you say the two societies, for example, if you say the two societies are similar, and if you say the two societies are different, how they are different? How they are similar? The causal explanations are to be given. For example, just a moment we will be beginning with the division of labor. And if I say that mechanical solidarity is different from the organic solidarity, there must be the certain causes. There should be certain features. The social facts are to be seen as a thing. And as a thing, with the things which are present over this, that could be studied empirically. So on the basis of this causality, causal connectivity, Durkheim is now saying that comparative method is not a method, rather it is a sociology in itself. Homogenization of cause and effect phenomena is there. And apart from the causal explanation, Durkheim is also focusing on the functional analysis. But in a functional analysis, Durkheim is not approving the very simplistic explanation of function. Now, for example, if you say what is the function of heart, we say function of heart is to pump, purify the blood and send it to the different arteries and veins. Fine. Is it a one-time affair? It means whenever you pick up the functional dimension in Durkheim, remember the word that is called, concept that is called self-regulating system. Either you are talking about family, or you are talking about religion, you are talking about division of labor, or any other things. Your analysis should be basically in terms of self-regulating system. The function of social fact is to produce socially useful effects. For example, function of heart is to purify and pump the blood to arteries and veins in a self-regulating system. Similarly, family, religion, laws, division of labor, all function in a self-regulating manner, contributing to maintenance of the society as a whole. And then you come to the features of social fact. ECG, that I said, external, constraint, and G for generality, to be viewed in terms of normal and pathological. Durkheim's treatment of social fact also underlines certain features like external, constraint, and generality. That is ECG, where he further divides G into normal and pathological. When social facts are analyzed and viewed from outside mind independently, without being reduced to individuals' internal motives and actions, it reflects exteriority. When Durkheim focuses on supra-individual forces which have the power to coerce individuals, the coercion is there. What I had said in a definition, that social facts are those collective ways of thinking, feeling and doing, which though comes through individual, but are external to him and are endowed with a coercive power. And this coercion is not unfortunate incident. It is basically to make an order, to bring about the structure in society. And since anything which is not being explained from an internal psychological predisposition, it is external to you, it has got the power to constrain you. So that way the constraint could be picked up. And I quote one line of Durkheim. Durkheim says that constraints are not to be viewed as unfortunate restrictions on individuals' freedom or mind. Rather, they are the base of social order, without which society would be no more than a chaotic struggle between selfish individuals. The individuals are selfish. If these constraints are not there, एनोमी में ठीक समझोगे बेटा, that modern man is not happy with the lot he has received. Man would be happy when there is a proportionate relationship between his desire and needs. His desires have outgrown his needs. And in pursuance of these desires, he may sometimes go against the regulative power of society, in which the anomy will emerge out. So without this order, society would be nothing but a chaotic struggle between the selfish individuals. And thus, Durkheim is talking about external and constraint. Apart from this, the third feature which is talking about generality, which I said that it is further divided into normal and pathological one. Durkheim, by using the medical metaphor, equated normal with usual, usual with healthy, whereas pathological with the unusual and unusual with unhealthy. Though we need to remember that in a normal society, certain pathological facts would be present and they would be tolerated to a certain extent. It is not so that in normal society pathological facts should be absent. They may be found. They may be tolerated. अब यहीं से डिवीजन ऑफ लेबर में लॉ को जोड़ देना बेटा, जहां तुम रिप्रेसिव और रेस्ट्रिक्टिव लॉ, जस्ट अभी आई विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस वन. So in the normal society, the pathological facts should be present and be tolerated to a certain extent. However, Durkheim is insisting that sociologists need to focus on pathological facts, so to bring society back to its normal, healthy position. This is, in general, the Durkheim's methodology of social fact and causal and functional kind of analysis. In direct experimentation, the indicators, historical, statistical, and ethnographic, social fact and objective fact, the sui generis, then the features in terms of ECG, G in terms of normal and pathological, you will be able to solve all the PYQs from there. And with the same methodological concerns, when you have become aware of, you will be approaching the three, that is division of labor, suicide, and realism. All right? Be happy? I have gone in more details. So, I told you the thinkers would be taking time, and I just want you not to run here and there. This video will be sufficient to tackle all the questions, and I will not be cause of a rejection. So, taking much time in terms of the thinkers, otherwise it could have been finished briefly. No, I am not talking about it briefly. So, if the time is being taken, we will be talking about, because once again I am saying, on every week we will be meeting to every students, we will be talking about their queries, talking about the certain PYQs and how the PYQs start to be addressed. Your tests which have come out, one or two which have looked at it. All right, we will be talking to this one. Now coming back to Durkheim. Now maximum questions we are looking at from Durkheim in a traditional kind of perspective is basically from the division of labor. And this division of labor in society in 1893 marks the entry of Durkheim into the sociological field, where he views division of labor as a social fact and tries to explain it through the historical indicator. Durkheim, in an attempt to describe the fundamental character of modern society, turns to a very prevalent romanticized idea of his time, where the comparison has been done between the simpler society and a modern society. And it was said that the simpler or pre-modern societies are characterized by harmonious and stable relations. The societies are simple, natural, transparent, and not exposed to conflict, tensions as present in a modern society. Durkheim follows this proposition. Is it true that simple society is a transparent, simple, less populous? All the things are fine. But Durkheim is disagreeing that integration is not possible in a modern society. Mind the lines better. Durkheim is basically trying to look at the modern form of integration. And in this very perspective, I repeat that Durkheim follows this idea to a certain extent, but refutes the claim that harmonious, stable relationship is possible only in pre-modern, simpler society. Thus, he focuses on the modern form of integration and argues that despite the emergence of differentiation and specialization, solidarity can still be found in a modern society. It means increasing specialization and differentiation does not forfeit integration. Alright? Modern society was viewed by many as being responsible for excessive individualism, thought to produce disruptive forces. But Durkheim argues that new form of specialization that has emerged in modern society does not mean that cohesion be forfeited. On the contrary, mind the question better, on the contrary, while becoming autonomous individual depends more on society, and within which you need to understand the metaphor of mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity related with the two types of a structure in terms of division of labor. Also the evolutionary perspective from simpler to the modern society. So if you are saying, the theorists are saying that modern society is governed by excessive individualism, and this excessive individualism is basically producing certain kind of disruptive dimension in society. But Durkheim says increasing specialization and differentiation does not forfeit cohesion. So why, while becoming autonomous individual, depends more on society? And therefore, this social cohesiveness, the new social cohesiveness and solidarity in a modern society is basically transformed by the division of labor. Thus, the prime concern of Durkheim division of labor is to address that why, while becoming autonomous individual, depends more on society. ये PYQ के क्वेश्चन होंगे बेटा तुमको, alright? थोड़ा सा बेसिक समझना, बेस समझना जरूरी है. Now I hope you are able to understand that why such kind of historical backgrounds are, debates are being talked about, so that what a stand the thinker has taken, that could be understood by you. Prior to Durkheim, division of labor was explained differently by the different scholars. The economists focused on the utility, individual desire, needs, whereas the neoclassical economists highlighted individual's rationality. Overall, the economists proposed that in simpler society, needs are limited, techniques are simple, people were not differentiated. But due to increase in population, needs widened, ultimately led to a specialization supported by individualism. It means division of labor increased due to change in society in which people adopted specialized occupations, resulting into differentiation. गौर करना बेटा, mind the line. But Durkheim argues that if this is the reality, what the economists are saying about, then it means people were already different and they were aware of the differentiation before the differentiation took place. Population increase kar gayi. Some people adopted their specialized functions, that way the differentiation come out. What was the base of adopting this specialized function? It means whatever the logic which you are giving, whatever the explanation which these economists are giving, it means before the social differentiation or before the differentiation emerged out, society was aware of the social differentiation. The demographers have argued that there is a connectivity between division of labor and size of population. Durkheim though picks up population as an explanatory variable, but apart from volume, that is a number, and density, he focuses on the moral density, that is the integrative relations between individuals. Social facts to be explained by the social facts. Social facts preceded and succeeded by the social facts. So in a division of labor, population is the one another dimension through which the division of labor is being talked about. But unlike the demographers, he is not restricting only in terms of volume and density, but he is talking about the moral density. Durkheim, bound by his own methodology, explains the division of labor as a social fact and explains it by another social fact, that is moral or dynamic density, that is number of people and amount of interaction between them. The rise of division of labor allowed people to complement rather than conflict with one another. Here in this context, Durkheim focuses on the conditions of society, that is the state of collective conscience. एक ऐसा पहला concept आया बेटा, alright? And the collective conscience with which he explains the perspective of solidarity in a two different social structure of society. Durkheim, through historical indicators, analyzes the evolutionary growth from simple to modern society in terms of mechanical and organic solidarity, within which he focuses on supra-individual forces and principles. Now, collective conscience is a combination of beliefs and sentiments common to average members of society. The belief that cannot be denied and the sentiments which is filled with emotions. The totality of beliefs and sentiments is the resultant expression of shared collectivity, which has its own life, operates on its own principle, therefore not to be approached through individual conscience, which manifest internal subjective perception of individual. No. Since it has its own life, since it has to be viewed independently, then we need to view it as a sui generis. Rather, collective conscience is outside the mind, implying the external character. And since it operates in the entire society, it has power to influence individuals. And thus it is endowed with coercive power. Sociologically, collective conscience expresses the totality of communicative principles, morals, and religious sentiments comprising the conscience of social grouping, which establishes solidarity, and through the collective conscience, society maintains a moral code binding people together. अब क्या करना बेटा, इसको वॉल्यूम में, इंटेंसिटी में, रिजिडिटी में, कंटेंट में देख लेना है. So sometimes you will be finding the question on collective conscience. We have defined what collective conscience is there, the base of solidarity. So this is the first concept in a division of labor. And talk about the mechanical organic. So in a mechanical, the volume of, that is the number of people enveloped by the collective conscience will be the entire society. Whereas it will be a particular group in organic because people have differentiated, specialized occupations have emerged out. Intensity in a mechanical solidarity would be high and it would be low in organic one. Rigidity in a mechanical would be high and low in organic one. And when we are looking at the content of this collective conscience in a mechanical and organic, in a mechanical the content is religious, and in the organic it is a moral individualism. Once we have picked up this concept, then we also need to talk about how Durkheim's division of labor is intricately linked to law. Social laws or legal percept, which could be defined as a code of conduct that is sanctioned. When the individual acts, there pertains systematic understanding regarding the demands of society, which is manifestation of collectivity, promoting integrative moral aspect. But when the act of individual is isolated, it leads to pathological state. Thus the law establishes the link with individual desire. It means what is law? Law is basically establishing link between individual desire and social interest. That's why law is an inevitable condition present in every society. However, law is not there in society to curb crime. अगर law से crime curb होता बेटा, तो there are so many laws in a society, crime could have not been there. Law is not there to curb crime. Rather, it is present in society to repair the hurt that collective conscience has received by the violator. And if the violator is not punished, it will affect collectivity. Thus, law is present to prevent such conditions in society. However, the objective of punishment is not to frighten the individual, or either not to deter as well, not to frighten, not to deter, rather to satisfy and restore the faith of collectivity in the individual. How? By punishing the violator. In a simple society, the nature of law is repressive, alright? And in the modern society, organic solidarity, the nature of law is restitutive, alright? Both these two laws can be differentiated from the other by the type of sanction attached to them. Type of sanctions attached to violations. Violation of repressive law results in punishment aimed at damaging the violator. Thus, mutilation, prison, torture of all kinds are the examples of repressive law, sometimes killing. Whereas restitutive law does not demand that violator be punished, rather be compelled by the state to undo the hurt the violator has caused to the victim. And if the restoration of things is not possible, then it must be compensated. And why we are saying? Because now society is not homogeneous, society has become heterogeneous. Autonomy of individual has increased. A specialization has taken place. Differentiation has occurred. Thus, such kind of repressive law is not there. So, in a modern society, we are finding about the law of nature of the law that is being restitutive, not repressive. Thus, the aim of law in a modern society is to re-establish the state of things as they are or they should be in accordance with justice. So, the third concept, collective conscience, repressive law, restitutive law, ऐसा क्वेश्चन देख लेना बेटा. According to the need distribution of questions, the distribution of words should be there. Alright? Should not be carried away by this, because if they are asking for the social structure in mechanical organic, so your major focus should be there. If the social structure is being asked in terms of the law, then your major focus should be there in terms of repressive and restitutive law. If they are asking the collective conscience, then your focus should be more on collective conscience. Alright? And then its distribution in mechanical organic, where the word distribution and the main core of the question has to be understood it by. And that's why I am saying that Durkheim's division of labor also manifests two types of social structure, for which Durkheim uses the metaphor of mechanical and organic solidarity. This mechanical and organic refers to the ways in which individuals are attached to one another in a society. Mechanical solidarity implies an attachment that demands severity. In mechanical solidarity, each unit is detachable and is able to exist. Whereas in living organism, body, all the organs, they are functioning independently. But the moment you take the part away from the whole, it will not survive. So once again I am saying, in the mechanical solidarity, each unit is detachable and is able to exist. Whereas in living organism, every unit or organ has a degree of specialization. They are mutually dependent on one another. So अभी क्या करना बेटा? Mechanical solidarity is the similarity between the similars. Organic solidarity is a similarity between dissimilars. Alright? So in a mechanical solidarity, the similarity between similars or a similarity of resemblance or attraction between the similars, manifesting likeness from which there has emerged the solidarity, where each one of is the macrocosm of the whole. People have no individuality, thus in reality each person perceives and reflects pretty much the same way the others have. People have same values, consider same thing to be sacred. Society is coherent because the specialization has not taken place. Alright? People are not differentiated. Right from beginning to end, people are engaged in a similar kind of activities, are similar in thoughts, feelings and doings. And if anyone has violated it, it would be dealt severely. Hence the nature of law is repressive. But the moment you come to the organic solidarity, so Durkheim further argues that eventually, causal one. Durkheim argues that eventually settlements and agriculture lifestyle generated artisans and leadership qualities, thereby giving way to specialization, resulting into varying perceptions, knowledge and moral views. People are no more alike in their conscience as differentiation has occurred among them. The society passed and evolved from being totally the product of likeness to that of mutual interdependence. Could be a question. With the evolution of modern society, the same cognitive moral components of society no longer resided in each individual, rather viewed from the one another, reflecting dissimilarity. Hence, organic solidarity is basically similarity between the dissimilars. Now mind the line beta. The functional interdependence between them brought similarities. As in a specialized unit, you could fulfill only one need. For the fulfillment of other needs, you need to be dependent on others. Do you remember why, while becoming autonomous, individual depends more on society? This is the functional interdependence. It is a similarity between the dissimilars. The organic solidarity manifests similarity between dissimilars. However, we need to remember that in organic solidarity, similarity stems not simply from the acceptance of common set of beliefs and sentiments, but from functional interdependence, individualism has increased, but not egoism. Here Durkheim picks up the concept of moral individualism, homo duplex, that individual is not only living for the society but also for himself, and that way the concept of moral individualism, homo duplex, should be coming out. In the same perspective, Durkheim is also talking about the pathological forms of division of labor, that is anomie division of labor, which refers to the lack of regulation in society, celebrating isolated individuality, lack of regulation. All right. It is what people should do, how they should do this. Such kind of things are not regulated. It occurs at the time of socio-economic crisis. The second pathological is the forced division of labor. The PYQ is there. It is outdated norms and expectations facing people and group of individuals. And the third one is the poorly coordinated division of labor. So in the pathological division of labor, you need to talk about anomie, forced and poorly coordinated division of labor. And similarly, in the same methodological perspective in terms of suicide, yet another social fact which Durkheim will be picking up in 1897. All right. Who the particular individual has committed suicide is not the concern of Durkheim. Rather, what were the certain forces which have made individual to commit suicide or may affect the individual to commit suicide was his more concern. Supra-individual forces and conditions we're talking about. And that way, suicide, the extreme individual act, Durkheim tries to analyze it not from the psychological perspective, but basically from the sociological perspective. Once again, I am saying, when we were talking about the relationship of sociology with the psychology, I said that in a very nascent phase, early phase, that sociology has nothing to do with psychology was basically established by Durkheim. And there we talked about the suicide. Here we are also talking about the suicide in Durkheim's analysis. Durkheim, with his publication of Suicide, 1897, attempts to analyze it is a social phenomenon. Let me make it clear to you that the kind of optimism what Durkheim has shown in analyzing the modern society and looking for the modern form of integration, solidarity. This very optimism is somewhere receives a jolt, receives a setback when Durkheim is now looking at the problems of the modern society. The pathological state prevailing in the modern society, in which one of the major problems which Durkheim will confront is basically suicide. All right. So Durkheim is focusing on the collective supra-individual forces that influence or may influence the act of individual. That's why I said that Durkheim says it is not my concern who the particular individual has committed suicide. Concern is to look at those collective supra-individual forces and conditions which have forced or may force the individual to commit suicide. And therefore, once again, I am saying in a suicide, once again, you are focused in a supra-individual forces. Though every suicide is characterized by the individual motives, but there is a stable pattern in every society, which Durkheim tries to explain through the perspective of social conditions and forces, for which Durkheim moves towards empiricism, thereby freeing the analysis of suicide from the pure psychological perspective. Durkheim has used the concomitant variable to examine the variations of suicide rate in different populations. He proposes that there is no correlation between psychopathological state with that of the suicide. Durkheim's focus is on multiple variable statistical indicator. By using the statistical indicator, so you are talking about concomitant or multiple variables like age, sex, religion in the analysis of suicide, thereby providing multivariant analysis by focusing on variations in suicide rate, for which Durkheim offers a specific, dynamic but less crystallized social current, which is non-materialistic in nature. अभी मैंने बोला था ना, social facts are materialistic, non-materialistic social current. So it is basically a specific, dynamic but less crystallized social current, which is non-materialistic in nature, but having the same ascendancy and objectivity over the individual. Despite it being less obvious, it comes to each one of us and has the capacity to carry each one of us away. social facts to be explained by the another social facts, succeeding and preceding. So here, Durkheim is basically talking about the social facts in terms of here. कुछ नहीं करना बेटा, ऐसा लिखना है सुसाइड explained by social current, non-materialistic in nature, but having the same ascendancy in objectivity. अभी मैंने बताया, इसी में इसको ले लेना बेटा, दो भाग में बांट देना है. इंटीग्रेशन एंड रेगुलेशन, which could be high and low. So that way, 4 types of suicide. So if integration is high, altruistic. If they low, then it is egoistic. These 2 types have nothing to do with the form of integration in a mechanical and organic. Rather, they are basically to do with the regulatory powers of society. So if the regulation is very high, fatalistic. Durkheim gives the example of slaves, and the low would be anomy. Alright? When the regulative power is decreasing, regulatory power has weakened, so that way the anomy will coming out. Usually when we talk about anomy, we said about normlessness. No. Normlessness is an impossibility in society. Norms provide predictability to the behavior. So these are the 4 types. Alright? और इसी 4 types में चारों को लिख लेना बेटा. That how in the altruistic society the integration is high. The individual has merged his personality with that of, or life with that of collectivity. And when collectivity demands, individual is ready to sacrifice his life. Is typically the feature of mechanical solidarity. Egoistic society may likely to occur in the society where the individual is not well integrated with the largest social unit. Lack of integration may seem meaningless to individual, resulting into the specific distinct current. अब क्या करेगा बेटा? With these types, they will also be asking that how Durkheim's suicide could be used in a contemporary reality of society. तो चाहे तुम farmers का ले लो या किसी का ले लो, will be finding about the certain examples. So look at, जब भी ऐसा question हो, whenever there is a question in terms of the certain current and contemporary issues, you locate this one within the broader conceptual domain of the thinkers. So if they are asking the suicide, it means now you need to understand that one into the types of suicide of Durkheim. In integration and regulation, integration high altruistic and integration low egoistic, regulation high fatalistic, regulation low anomic. So fatalistic society is the least mentioned suicide in the Durkheim's suicide and occurs when the regulatory process of society becomes excessive, blocking and choking the individual due to excessive regulation. Slave का example मैंने दिया. An anomy that has nothing to do with the relationship between people, but the way the rules and norms exert pressure on individual behavior. The concept of anomy was introduced to sociology by Durkheim. It literally means normlessness, but I said that normlessness is an impossibility. So we'll also be writing that line that it is basically weakening of norms. Anomy is the condition when regulatory power of society weakens or breaks down. Alright, Durkheim argues that I have all just said that modern man is not happy with the lot he has received. He is guided by the unlimited desire. Durkheim believes that man would be happy when his desires and needs are in proportion to one another. The normative regulation of society controls the unlimited desire of the individuals. Not only unlimited desires, but aspirations of individuals. But many a times in pursuance of unlimited desire, man goes against the normative order of society, leading to anomy, which Durkheim considers as a pathological state. Alright? When the individuals have become incapable of limiting their desires. So यहाँ से anomy ले लो, which occurs mostly in terms of socio-economic crisis, Anomy in economic crisis, anomy in a family disorganization है, सुसाइड वाला केस सब देख लो बेटा, डाइवोर्स वाले सब के डोमेन में, वुमेन का क्वेश्चन भी जीएस में पूछा था. So one of the factor we are talking about is anomy and family disorganization and lack of anomy and lack of sexual regulation. These are the certain examples we pick up. All right, and that way the society will be talked about. Criticisms will be done. And yet another apart from the society in Durkheim is the perspective from where the questions are coming out is basically Durkheim's sociology of realism. Let me first say that Durkheim was a Jew belonging to the tradition of rabbis, family rabbis. Everyone wanted him to follow the same familial calling. But Durkheim renounced all realism. Despite this, Durkheim's account of religion is still considered to be one of the very significant work in a sociological tradition. From the simpler society to the modern society, the way he has basically analyzed religion in his elementary forms of religious life is the most significant one. 1912, Durkheim's Sociology of Religion is still considered to be one of the classical works which published as elementary forms of his life in 1912, in which Durkheim picks up ethnographic indicators. बोला था मैंने, though the indicators are not arbitrarily arranged in a society, even if the society is intangible, if it has to be measured objectively, we need to approach it through the indicators. So we use the historical indicator in division of labor, a statistical indicator in society, and now we are using the ethnographic indicator in religion. Durkheim's ethnographic data is basically based on the research work of others from the Arunta tribe of Australia, Australian Aborigines, ARUNTA. And through this data, secondary data है बेटा, Durkheim analyzes variables such as what contribute to sacred, how society reveals itself in terms of pre-scientific mythologization, and thus he describes the early process through which socio-moral changes started to take place, which is a complex phenomena called collective effervescence, in which primitive people gathered in shared rituals and members were merged totally in the sui generis collective reality. And the collective representation that emerged out of it permeated the entire society. In this book, Durkheim also analyzes customs, myths to discuss the essence of religion. Durkheim considered that the Arunta tribe and other such primitive societies offer a privileged case, as they are simpler in nature, in which life is reduced to essential traits, bare minimum. All right. So there is a very chances that they would be least misunderstood. Though Durkheim's analysis is based on the findings of other scholars, the strength of Durkheim lies in the fact that he attempts to address more general aim, that is, to explore some religious elements found in all societies, including the modern society. While focusing on the development of human knowledge about society, he argues that knowledge of society in essence is revealed by the society itself. आपने पढ़ा होगा अगर आप पढ़ रहे होंगे तो, that society is a real God. All right. The hell and heaven lies nowhere but in the society. By worshipping the totem, we worship the society itself. We'll be coming to this one. Your mythologization, your understanding may vary from group to group, from society to society. The understanding of social in primitive society differ from the understanding of social in the modern society. Durkheim begins with a statement that all religions are true and focuses on the fundamental theological point of view. By citing myths which are sui generis in nature, they are not imaginative stories or fantasies. Rather, they are representative of underlying truth in a form understood by people in a society at that level, or at that specific level of development. It means all religions represent underlying truth about society, a mythologized form that people can understand. Durkheim thus views traditional concept of God as a socially generated mythologization of society itself, which is a sui generis reality. The universal nature of religion is organized collectivity, which means religion is always collective in nature, comprising a collective sense of beliefs and reality. Though sometimes it may not be believed in personified God, but in all religions there is a notion of some special power influencing human behavior and distinguishing between sacred and profane. एकदम दूसरा सबसे बड़ा concept Durkheim के religion में sacred and profane. On the basis of this distinction between sacred and profane, Durkheim would also be becoming critical of the earlier theories on the origin of religion, that is animism, animatism and naturism. Animism was proposed by E.B. Tylor, animatism by R.R. Marett, and Max Muller is the one who is talking about the naturism. He says the origin part should come later on. The distinction between sacred and profane should be there. Since these theories, origin of religion, they have not been able to distinguish between sacred and profane. Durkheim basically moves towards the theory that is called totemism. And totem became the base within which the distinction between sacred and profane was done. So that way the sacred and profane, the essence of religion is always found in belief and rituals that divide the world in sacred and profane. And also a particular behavior towards sacred. Analysis of religion should always begin with the distinction between sacred and profane. And thus he moves away from previous theories of religion, origin of religion like animism, animatism and naturism. Sacred are objects, symbols, activities that are set apart and forbidden from ordinary life. Whereas profane is related to those activities, mundane activities, utilitarian in character, which people relate in a utilitarian manner, in terms of its usefulness in achieving everyday goals. The religious consciousness emerges out of this mythologization of society. Sacred is set apart and forbidden. And there is also a certain fear of violation. That is, sacred comes in contact with the profane, it will become impure. So whereas profane is related to the mundane activities, the sacred is at par excellence, which profane should not touch with impurity. That's why religious life is always kept away from the ordinary life. Whenever we go to the temples, whenever we go to the Gurdwara or mosque or the church, we just try to purify it. Our religious life seems to be distinct from that of the normal life. Durkheim argues that religion did not emerge out of primitive man's need to explain cosmic, often catastrophic natural events. And even if it is so, it might not have produced this effect on primitive man's mind or life, since primitive man is not aware of this fact that cosmic power is superior to him. जैसा animatism बताएगा नहीं. Religion is not a mystery. It's not an illusion, Durkheim says, or belief in a transcendental God. Since throughout human history, man have never worshipped any reality other than collective social reality, transfigured by the faith called God. I repeat, thus religion is not a mystery, is not an illusion, or belief in transcendental God, since throughout human history, man have never worshipped any reality other than collective social reality, transfigured by faith called God. It means religion is an unified system of beliefs and practices related to sacred things that unite them in one moral commune called church. To all those who adhere to it, thus rituals and church seems to be an important factor or important elements in the Durkheim theory of religion. Durkheim also, while making distinction between sacred and profane, further argues that sacred, whether it be power, place, things or institution, is the very incarnation of social special power, through which believers feel that they are related to, they are attached to, and they consequently develop a respect for sacred. At the same time, one of the most emotional features related to sacred is a fear of violation. And that's why they are kept away from profane. However, while making distinction between these two and elevating some aspect of social life to the sacred, Durkheim argues that they are necessary but not the sufficient condition for development of religion. Some other conditions are also required, like development of a set of religious beliefs, a set of religious rituals, a church as a single overreaching moral community. Once the sacred attribution is attributed or confined to an object, it turns out to be a symbol, a totem, manifesting group identity. In this context, Durkheim considers totem to be the earliest form of religion. A religion में भी जाएगा बेटा. Unit 8, religion and society. वहाँ animism भी है. So Durkheim is saying that totemism is the earliest form of religious life. Totem is nothing less than a clan or a group. It is personified and presented to the imagination of believers under the visible form of animals and plants. Worshipping totem manifests power of collectivity. When the individual gathers to perform a ritual in collectivity, he comes in an exalted form. That exalted form leads to the loss of self. And this loss of self is the most significant one. Thus he comes in exalted state, feels dominated and carried away by some sort of external force. He feels ecstasy which he has never felt alone. He thinks and acts differently from his normal ordinary life. This exaltation leads to the loss of self, necessary for the affirmation of group identity and solidarity. Religion binds people together. Religion also ensures that no one would be left alone to face the crisis of life, because you are a part of collectivity. Why we are part of collectivity? So once you become a part of collectivity, religion is ensuring that no one would be left to face the crisis of life alone. And in this very perspective, Durkheim is talking about that while worshipping totem, you are basically worshipping a clan. Society is personified God. The hell and heaven lies nowhere but in the society itself. And this way we are talking about from totem. But Durkheim is also talking about the religion in the modern society. It means Durkheim is also talking about the emergence of higher consciousness in religion. And why is he speaking of the higher consciousness of religion? Since he believes that sense of belief in transcendental religion will gradually give way to rational scientific knowledge. Science and religion में ले जाना बेटा. Modern man does not need religion as it was required by the primitive man. Why most of the things are happening around him? The logic of science has made the modern man to understand it. So the modern man may not need religion as it was required. Science can pose a moral threat to religion, but not the end of it. Mind this line once again repeating. Durkheim says science can pose a moral threat, but not the end of it. Some sort of collectivity will always be there. So when the Durkheim turning his attention to the higher consciousness in religion, he is basically talking about the sense of belief in transcendental religion will gradually give way to the scientific, rational knowledge. But there would still be a sense of something sacred in all societies. An element of cults activities would be manifested through new rituals and symbols. This would exist since to individual, collectivity always functions as a moral force. Man is man because he lives in society. Take away from man anything which is social. Man is nothing but animal or at par with the animal. So man is man because he lives in society. Take away from him all that is social in origin. Nothing would be left except an animal or something at par with the animal. Durkheim also draws our attention towards new changes that have taken place post the French Revolution, within which he suggests some criterion for the modern form of religion. अभी मैंने बोला था, the phases and the conditions through which the French society has transformed is also having an influence on Durkheim's theoretical development. So now here we are talking about in terms of religion. So place post the French Revolution, within which he suggests some criterion for the modern form of religion, which he believes would no longer be based on belief in transcendental god or goddesses, since modern man does not need religion as it was required by the primitive man. Since the rationality based on science has made modern man to know the causes behind most of the happenings in and around him or them. There has emerged number of ceremonies, however, rituals, symbols, which has nothing to do with the traditional god and goddesses. People now gather to praise the nations, new institutions, liberty, freedom, universal rights, contributing to the emergence of new form of religious consciousness. The form of nationalism that has now emerged in the modern society reflects new collectivity. Civil religion, Robert Bellah कहा जाएगा बेटा. So the form of nationalism that has emerged in the modern society reflects new collectivity, providing meaning to man's existence in the new forms. And that way, Durkheim has to be talked about. In terms of his exteriority, in terms of how to talk about the intangibility, constraint, how religion is dysfunctional, how population could also be a biological fact. You will be finding certain kind of criterion, the certain kind of criticism by the sociologist. And with this you will be approaching Durkheim. I basically first want you to develop the concepts into these thinkers, and then we will be critically analyzing that. And I'll also be posting that one in WhatsApp, because I had said to you, once again I'm saying, on Saturday I'll be asking any one of you to make a group, and on this group make me the admin, allowing me to send you the certain things. So I'll be sending you the certain kind of materials which I feel that you need to know it. So in terms of this sociological thinkers, apart from Marx, Durkheim will be talking about Weber in this sequence. All right, thank you.